Welcome to Live Well, Be Wise, the podcast that deepens the well-being conversation, finding the gold in your stories of hardship and the connection to wise action and lived wellness.
We are your hosts, Dorrinda Carlson
and Kari Lyons-Price. Welcome to our 1-year anniversary celebration episode. Dorrinda and I are so honored to be doing this work and excited today to sit down and reflect on our first year, exactly what this work is teaching us, what connections we're seeing between wisdom and wellness, and a really fabulous wisdom mashup at the end of the show that shares one nugget of wisdom from every one of our 12 interviewees from season 1. We want to hear from you. Dorrinda mentions this in the show today. We want to know if this show is sparking you to make any change, to recognize something, to shift perspective, any little spark. Here's the show. Enjoy.
Hello, Live Well, Be Wise audience. We haven't had time to process our last year.
And celebrate our first year this month, March.
And you do have to celebrate yourself when you come to those
milestones.
Anniversaries. Yeah,
let's do a review and think about what this project is bringing to our lives and what these people's incredible stories are maybe awakening in us.
I know everyone with their story, something's enlivened. I'm like, wow, look at that. I mean, yes, there's a story there, but there's perspective. Because you're seeing it through your eyes, you're hearing it through your ears, so you have your way of processing that story. And it could really open up a new perspective.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a really beautiful broad range of just people from so many different walks of life.
Different ages.
Yeah, different ages and cultural backgrounds and just doing different work in the world.
It's nice to hear from all our women folks since we're 2 women doing this.
Yes.
But of course, we want to hear from our men and hear their, passages, their vulnerability, the way they've processed their stories.
Yeah. And so, we're in a time when gender is shifting.
Yes.
So also gathering the trans experience. Express my deepest gratitude to my partner here. I am so, so grateful and so happy that we co-created this. I wouldn't say it's a wild project, but it's so fulfilling. It so speaks to kind of the heart, right? The passion of what we wanted to do. And it did feel wild and different at the time. And now it just feels right. That's how I would say it. But I just want to thank you so much for being on this journey with me.
Oh, that just so makes my heart come alive. I know that I feel grateful that you brought this alive in me. And yes, I had been doing some teaching yoga on the radio for 8 years, but nothing like this. And wild to me, when you said wild, it conjured up out of comfort zone.
Yes. So that fits. That totally fits. Because I remember the look on your face. You're like, you want to do what?
So that does feel wild when you step off those known places to the unknown. But I have to say, what I'm really grateful for is being a bystander and relishing the stories that we've taken in. To me, that was so just proud moments of feeling honored of people sharing their stories. So thank you for sharing this vision.
Yes. I think it's such a good example of how the co-creation process can be so much bigger and brighter and feel so much more right than we just do something by ourselves.
Yeah, the ripples. Yeah. The ripple effect of 2 and then 3.
For sure.
Because we're always interviewing somebody typically. It's so much richer.
All right. Question 1.
Drum roll.
Dorrinda, what has season 1 taught you?
We were chatting about this prior to plugging in and putting the headsets on. And I've really realized how these are aha moments. These are awakening moments where, we don't know when they're going to happen. It could be a lifetime. I mean, when we look at Linda and how late in her life, her situation unfolded.
Yeah.
And then she came to this realization, or it can be as early as Zoe.
I consider myself transgender. For me, what that means is that I grew up being told and using the language of girl, female, and I tried to go with it as long as I could, really. Maybe I'm not. A woman was around 18.
Yeah, I need this to happen in my life now for me to be me. It's just touching how people have tuned in. And I think that's a lesson to listen. Got to slow down here. And so maybe that's my takeaway is listening more to this body, this person, these thoughts. Not that the thoughts are me, but if I'm listening to those thoughts, then I do have a moment to go, oh, that thought really isn't valid anymore, or that belief doesn't belong anymore in this body. So those aha moments have had me reflect on myself.
Yeah, it's almost contagious.
Right? And that's what we're hoping for.
Right, that's kind of the spirit of inspiration. When you're inspired, you feel like, oh, I want that. I want to try that. I want to taste that.
And then you, my friend.
Yes. I think the first thing, the wisdom process, it's slippery. I think I want to start there. It's slippery. People don't really want to own it. They don't want to say, I'm wise, either with a loud voice or a whisper.
Isn't that interesting?
I'm not wise. I'm too young to be wise.
Oh,
yes.
That's the resistance.
I'm 55.
We kind of have to say like, I think that's wisdom. That is more readily available out there than we think. Before I started this project, I thought, yeah, wisdom is for some people. I wasn't sure I would have thought it's for everybody in the sense of everyone's aware of it. I thought it was more of an issue of awareness, and now I think it's out there. It's in every story. It's in every body, and we may not really think about it or talk about it until it's sort of drawn out. Yeah.
And that's been our process here is to talk about it.
Right. And I think we talk about it in the sense of learn and grow. And so we're kind of caching the wisdom statement or word in that learn and grow process. I also think even more deeply personal, I have learned through season 1 that I'm doing exactly what I love right here.
Oh,
what I was meant to do. And I've heard a lot of these stories in the therapist chair and different advocacy roles in mental health, and this deep experience of the story in sort of a nutshell, right? In this is our hour. This is, let's share it out, you know? It's sort of confined, but it also defines it very well.
Good point.
Yeah, and that connection at the deepest level. I mean, you're not going to walk into a dinner party or meet someone downtown for coffee and really go this deep.
It is interesting how it feels talking to friends. However, like you said, there is a little mission there.
Yeah.
But it opens up so broad, so deep, so quick.
Yeah. And I also love that it's not just me or connecting to you, to them, or the three of us connecting, and then connecting our story to the community, because that's a layer of connection. But also we have seen live while we're talking to people, because we're almost always face to face, people are connecting to themselves. Sometimes right in the moment, they are connecting those literal dots of their story. They're understanding their process and they're owning their truth.
I think it came full circle for me. In October, I was given the 2024 Mental Health Professional of the Year Award. And in my acceptance speech, I thanked that 11-year-old girl. And I think it was like, we did it.
Some people at the end say, and it's often offline when we've stopped recording, that was so healing for me. Like,
it was cathartic.
Yeah. I think Kelly said that.
Thank you both. This was such a it was so like healing for me just to have this conversation and think about these things.
A lot of these folks had shared their stories in some manner. And so some of it was processed, some of it was practiced. But then when you're sitting down to just talk about it, it seems more profound.
Yeah, that's what season 1 taught me. I mean, it's continual, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all the basics too, like the power of story.
Yes.
The power of sharing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the second thing that we thought together would be super interesting to think about and then talk about here is what the wisdom process seems to be thus far.
We have seen willingness. We have seen maybe years after someone has said, no, I'm not listening to that voice. I'm not listening to that voice. But somewhere down the line, there was a willingness to open to that thought, to that feeling, to that sensation, and go that direction. So maybe a willingness is if we want to say recipe,
a factor.
Is a factor.
Yeah. Yeah. The timing, I think of. I often put the word sacred timing together because I think that just means in some way there's universal input.
Right.
Right. For the
time.
And
we just said right. And so a lot of folks to me have said right timing.
Yes. Yeah. Right time. Certainly in these stories, this seems true. And it's what came to me. And it's also been true in my own life is that the wisdom process is always kicked off by pain, some painful event, like a suicide loss or neglectful adoptive home environment, or finding out your parent is terminally ill and they want you to help them with their last day. I mean, so many things, right? Divorce, burnout.
Challenges, hardships, troubled times.
Right. And that's the normal. But I think what's interesting about the wisdom process is that kickoff, painful event or a period of time of suffering, I don't think it's conscious then. It can't be. What I'm learning from people, it feels like it goes underground, like it sits in this vault. I can imagine it in my mind's eye, like in the heart center. And what sits in the vault is the caring. Caring about the pain, caring to have a better life, caring for our life at the deepest level. And at some point saying, I'm going to tend to my pain.
So there's some great compassion there.
Yeah. Little seeds live in that vault, I think. And at some point, it seems as though, we begin to have those awakening, those moments of like timing or whatever. Sometimes it's the deepest breakdown and having a near-death experience or push to the ultimate limit. And then you have that moment and maybe that vault starts to creak open and you say, I'm going to get conscious. I'm going to be intentional about finding my way to wellness, back home, whatever you want to call it, out of this mess.
Right.
And then the wisdom starts to turn. I think it's like I think of a rock in a tumbler,
Yeah.
And it starts to crystallize.
So when you are mentioning at the beginning in this vault, I guess for me, I think initially after a challenging moment, and I'm going to go with, something painful, like physically painful, because that's something I think that's tangible for us all.
And you've been through that, right?
And I've been through that. Sometimes there's a shock, right? And so you can't tend
for sure. It's not immediate.
Right. You can't tend to it. You have to tend to the most physical level of processing, but then all the other processing of your energy, your emotional body, your mental state out of all of that takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So none of that is initial. So there's this shock time. And then, like you said, there's the awareness like, oh,
this isn't working.
This isn't working anymore, and it's messy.
Right.
There has to be change.
Yeah.
There has to be a change.
It makes me keenly aware of the 17 years I spent living with depressive disorder. And I mean, I was diagnosed not diagnosed till 18, but probably living with it from 14. And so those weren't conscious years. That's all I really knew. That's who I was. I was like, well, I'm the kind of kid who's sad and withdraws and doesn't like school, or...
That was your norm.
Yeah, that was just who I thought I was. And so I think the vault didn't start shaking to say, let's try something else, or there's got to be something different. That awareness started peaking out around 27, 28, after a long, long period of just being with the pain part. But over time, I feel like I really did. Like a lot of our guests have this experience of coming to find some pearls when I opened that vault. When I got resourced, and I was very lucky because I had the financial resources to try different things and do different therapies. I had time to do my own research and read books and to take mindfulness courses. But I think getting resourced is part of that time frame. And then, it's like you're gathering your tools.
Yeah. So there's maybe a shock or a moment, and then there's an awareness. You came to your awareness period.
Yeah.
And then finding the tools.
Yeah. And some of that awareness, I think that's so pivotal, is I don't want to live like this anymore.
Yes.
And we heard that from a lot of people.
We did.
Yeah. There's a moment of this just can't continue.
I was sitting by myself one evening and had a very profound, probably my first true belief of an encounter with spirit, is that a voice came into my head and said, "You're in a downward spiral. Where are you going in your life?" And it was so auditory and shocking, but yet nurturing. And at that point, I internally, just on the dime, made a decision that I needed to quit all drugs, all drinking, pull my respect of myself back in. Yeah. So it was a really difficult process of white knuckling through that.
Well, for myself, I found that I think mine was a kind of a quicker aha than your process, in that I had pain that I knew that wasn't normal. And so when that happened, it was like, okay, what do I do? Where do I go? I did have some time and money, but I had joint pain for the longest time. Yeah, finding the tools is crucial. And you can come to the awareness. I mean, that's, your first pivot, but then to go, oh, there are ways that I can cope.
Yeah. So what were your key resources or tools?
I went from, it was just timing in my life where I could quit a position that was actually bringing me pain into my body. And probably on different levels that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
I was working at a law firm, and that didn't feel good in my body as that itself.
To be in the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the physical pain just came from, the phones, the everything that metaphorically and emotionally holding the world on your shoulders. So I was able to quit that position and found yoga, coincidentally or synchronicity, literally 6 blocks away. And I started going routinely.
Nice.
And
this is before it was like on every block.
Oh, yeah.
And people weren't really talking about it.
I'm not going to say how long ago.
It was new.
I mean, I do remember my first yoga class. Actually, I was going with my mom when I was probably 4 years old. I remember doing cat-cow, but didn't come back to it until I was in my 30s. Yeah, until I needed it. This was a major step and change. Different philosophies on how to treat your body and your mind.
I want to also draw a quick thread that those tools, those impetus things, often things that can help us have the awakening or help us see something different. Like I remember Kelly talking about the book.
Reading The Power of Now, which by Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. I think that book was like this it caused a switch to go off in my brain where it was the first time I realized that I was not my thoughts.
That was huge for her. And I remember another book, Juan Pablo talked about a book in a book club he stumbled into at the library that was hugely changing for him. Oh, and another massive resource was like Linda's faith.
Right.
She could hear the voice of God, and that comforted her whole life, feeling so abandoned and alone.
A voice she trusted.
And I have to say, some things are easy on our own to forgive, but there's things like this, I don't feel like on my own I could have forgiven her. I felt like I needed somebody that could help me, and that somebody was God. Team support.
So it's just so interesting. We never know, where that resource is going to come from. I think the last thing I'll just say on that, and I wrote this sentence down, the wisdom process is, in the simplest sense, what we do with our pain.
Wow. Okay. I just want to take a breath. I was going to respond, but I think that, can you say it again?
The wisdom process, in the simplest sense, is what we do with our pain.
Before we came on, we chatted about this a little bit, about perspective. Mm-hmm. And we also discussed this with Kim about attitude, perspective and attitude. Mm-hmm.
That's the agreement that husband and I had. This is a wartime effort. We're going to do this, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to come out through the other end. And it had a lot to do with where our minds were at and how we were going to take care of this.
And how that impacts our being. Like that right there is a coping mechanism. And sometimes it's so overlooked because when we're in pain, sometimes we relish it. You get a high from that just as much as a high from happiness. Mm-hmm. But isn't it interesting that just if you could turn it on its head or turn yourself on your head, it's a different outlook at the issue, at the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I think I would add to that too, it's not just what we do with our pain, but it's how we are in relationship to it.
Yes.
Because there's learning. There's so many other verbs. It's not just a doing, right? It's listening. Are we open to receive messages? Are we thinking it's just one way? I just got to get rid of this, get through it. I think the wisdom is absolutely the perspective shifting, and everything that has to do with learning is just embedded right there. And that's what everyone's stories were so full of. They all journeyed there in a different way, a different time scales.
There's not a timeline to it.
It's not prescribed. So what in the world does wisdom have to do with wellness? I almost think we started this to figure out the relationship between them, to deepen our understanding.
Yeah, because initially we were thinking about wellness.
Yes, just wellness, like the industry and practitioners and products and tools.
We wanted to do a deeper dive. What does wellness do? Why is wellness benefit? Why is it?
Or even what is it?
Yeah, what is it?
What is it?
And then it's so prominent in our Western world nowadays, but we wanted to go deeper than that. And I think we've found it. So all of the folks that we chatted with, if we think about it, they had their aha moment. They were able to process their situations. Boy, oh boy, it brought them to vulnerability. What does that mean? Why does that matter? It brought them closer to them being themselves.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I was stuck in traffic and I was just sitting there and I thought, you know what? This is your day. And it was very clear. I was listening to the radio and I just said, this is your day. It's no one else's day. It's your day. This day belongs to you and no one else. And you need to remember that all the time.
And Juan Pablo says,
just like, I want to be myself.
Yeah, change their lives.
Yeah.
It brings me to little chills, actually.
Now that you mentioned Jamie, I'm thinking of the jousting that happened in the Mahakala room in the Himalayas. and it's like that moment, he recognized, I have been here before. That was a seminal moment.
Mm-hmm. On that note, there's been some deep magical pieces to people's stories.
Yes, and that's one of them. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's a good reminder that we can't always know, that the mystery needs to be alive. The magic and the mystery. We just have to recognize it, I think as humans, we're just desperate to control it, pin it down, know it, have the narrative.
Yeah, we have expectations.
Yes. Yeah. My life is like this, or it's going to be like this.
Or this is the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so much room. Oh, that's more wisdom that season 1 has taught us. I think for me, the relationship between wellness and wisdom, I went back to the image of the vault, and I thought the wellness feels like the result of time in the vault. There's that rock that's been turning, the jagged, rough, broken rock. That's the pain, and it's turning and turning and turning, and it's becoming crystallized and smooth and beautiful, and then it starts to sparkle.
Becomes a gem.
Yeah. And then when you're aware of that, I think you become motivated to care for yourself in a way that's just natural,
more authentic,
more possible.
Possible.
Yeah.
Oh, possible.
Yeah, even just possible. It's like, oh, now that I have more sparkly than gray in my heart, I can see what my life could be. Our attitude, our energy shifts when we work with what hurts. And that wellness feels kind of like the reward. It's the harvest.
Also, what I hear, especially with this rock tumbler, is there's a practice.
There's effort.
Yes.
There's effort. It's energy. It's happening. It's moving. And I think that's every time we pick up that book. It's every time we show up to the yoga class. It's when we put down the glass of wine and pick up the tea or whatever it is.
We listen to the inner voice.
Yeah.
So I feel that we've done a lot. We've uncovered a lot this last year.
Yes.
Now, what would be interesting is to hear from our listeners maybe what has been uncovered for them.
Absolutely.
That would be a treat for you to reach out and let us know. How have these stories touched you? What are the gems you have found?
Because I think there's times, right, I can think for myself like, oh, we hear stories all the time through media, through friends, in all ways and all days. Right? And some of them just float right through. Like they don't even touch down.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is nice to hear. I mean, from our stories, there's the hardship and the challenge. So sometimes some of those may be hard for some folks to stomach, but a little bit of it's like, oh, there was a hard time in someone's life, and look what they did with it.
Yes.
So there's kind of that like, okay, a little uplift. So I know you have a way of calling that ear candy, which is nice, actually. We have to have those in our lives too. Stories that make us laugh.
Right. Exactly.
Stories that even actually make us cry, because that feels good too.
And Scott did both.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
Oh, so there are those aspects that hopefully have touched people's hearts in that manner. Yeah. But then what? Has something sparked an aha moment? Has something sparked an awareness
that's caused a shift or full-on change, or maybe you've decided to reach out, or going back to one of our deepest intentions for the show around letting people know they're not alone, because that's really where I was for so long with the depression. And that imprint doesn't really leave you, even though I don't have that disease anymore, which I'm so thankful for. I remember what it's like to feel like you're the only one suffering. And I think it's so human. I can now see that at some point all of us have that thought and time where we might feel that. And we hope that these stories are giving you a little bit of a lasting imprint of, oh, Dr. Condefer, she's high up on this ladder, right? She talked about climbing that ladder because she was taught that when I get to the top, I will be happy. And then recognizing that she wasn't. Like, I hope that lets all of us feel that we're more on the same rung of this ladder than we think we are, even though we drive different cars, have different budget.
Yeah, there can be striving in your life for sure. But if you're not thriving inside, then what does the striving matter?
Yeah. And the myth of where we find happiness.
So hopefully those have been inspirational stories, inspirational moments in the stories. So at our winter gratitude party with all our interviewees, we kind of brought out everybody's a little. And when I did say that, Jamie's story was, this is my day. And you pointed out that this is what your husband has taken on.
Yeah.
So we know these stories are rippling out.
Yeah, I've been hearing these stories from friends.
Yeah. So there has been some action taken.
Yes. Yeah. The ripple. It's going to keep going out and coming back. Oh, we feel so fulfilled and we're so grateful. And I think, as they say in the industry, my friend, that's a wrap.
Nothing tastes as good as healthy feels.
Are you giving yourself the same love that you give others?
As soon as I can stop my desire of always wanting to have something so I can be happy, I can actually have time to enjoy what I have.
A lot of the things that look like failures, but you might consider that those circumstances, those events are actually stepping stones. And I have a lot of brokenness in my life, but I view it differently now. I see them as points of growing and maturing.
I think it was on Saturday Night Live, and someone came in and said, I'm deathly afraid of being buried alive. And he said, stop doing that. So I tell myself to stop doing it.
I am my own best friend. I can depend on myself. And I love me. And it will be me forever. Believe in yourself.
I decided we were going to leave the Christian church. I could not be motivated by fear anymore in any part of my life.
That word specifically, grow, is something that really changed my mindset. It was something I could use for the better instead of just focusing on what was so bad about not being the same as other people.
And vulnerability is something that we have to learn and practice, because if we do it a little too hard, too fast, it starts getting into the distress. It really is essential for how we come together as community. Can we challenge ourselves to get curious before we start putting up the defenses?
Fulfillment, happiness, it is within you. You can't acquire it from anything, even in achievements.
The people that I meet that are at the most peace are people that have gotten out of the race. They have just stopped and said, I'm just doing things my way.
We get conditioned to believing that our worth is diminishing the more tired and exhausted and demoralized and overwhelmed we are. Recognizing that is toxic and not true.
Live Well, Be Wise is produced and recorded by Kari Lyons-Price and yours truly, Dorrinda Carlson. Our music is titled Inside You by Leva, a musician and composer at Lemon Music Studio, who we happily found on pixabay.com. Our circle of sharing has concluded for today, but we'd like to give a great gratitude to you, my friend, for listening, for tuning in, maybe even tapping into that understanding and compassion and the knowing within that tells us we're not alone in our own stories. So maybe you would like to share one of your own, or know a friend or a mentor or a teacher, someone you admire that has an extraordinary and inspirational story. We all have stories. The more we share, the more we know we're not alone. And don't be shy to reach out to connect in other ways, too. Of course, we'd love for you to subscribe and also give feedback. We wouldn't be here without you. We appreciate you. Live well, be wise.